missing jet skier has been found in Lake Lanier.
He slipped off a dock, fell into the water, and didn't resurface. His body was found 17 feet underwater.
He is the 8th person to drown at the lake this year.
A 73-year-old man has drowned in Lake Lanier.
Lake Lanier strikes again.
There's been yet another victim at Lake Lanier.
Why do people drown at Lake Lanier?
Or safety measures? Or is the lake haunted?
Is Lake Lanier haunted?
Is Lake Lanier haunted?
Is Lake Lanier haunted?
It's perfectly safe to have fun and do stuff in this lake. A lot of people do. As far as the superstition goes, I wouldn't really worry about that.
The Cherokee Indians, they lived here, they were moved away.
I think that my purpose was for such a time as this, to make known that Oscarville was real, a real place.
If I were a person of color that experienced Oscarville, I'd think this shit's haunted.
Let's, as a people, think about Oscarville and the people of Oscarville. Let's think about that. Let's think about their lives, their families.
Led to one of the most recent attacks on a community, gladiator style, with night riders and torches and burning buildings and hanging men.
Because I'm not ever gonna call it Lake Lanier again. It will always be Oscarville out of my mouth. But I think we should come as a people just to pay homage to our people. Because why are we afraid? I didn't pass away. I got saved.
In the heart of northern Georgia lies a man-made reservoir, stretching 26 miles in length with 692 miles of shoreline. The lake is considered full when its surface reaches 1,071 feet above sea level. This ginormous lake is better known as Lake Lanier. We're back in the 1950s when the lake's origin began. The United States Army Corps of Engineers created Lake Lanier to push the area into the future no matter what. Lake Lanier aimed to stop the Chattahoochee River from flooding the Atlanta metro and provide water and energy to the surrounding area. Over the years, thanks to its picturesque aura, the lake has been a cherished haven for locals and visitors alike for swimming, jet skiing, and partying. However, beneath its surface lies a haunting truth, a stark contrast to its serene exterior. Since the inception of the lake in 1956 until now, 700 individuals have lost their lives. This leads us to a question for you. Is Lake Lanier haunted by its murky past, or are the incidents on the lake merely the outcome of common safety oversights?
I think there's something that makes me not want to swim in the lake and like at nighttime, I don't like to go on the lake at night in a boat. So, could be.
To me, I think it's volume and negligence. I mean, just for instance, like we had one guy try to swim across a cove like this one behind me. Couldn't swim, but he was using a soccer ball. But the second that soccer ball popped out of his hands, he was done.
Probably. I wouldn't put it past it. I do believe that there is there's a seen world and there is an unseen world. I wholeheartedly believe in that. Could there be? Yeah, I do believe it could be. Houses are haunted, you know. You have spirits that don't rest easy in houses or don't rest easy just roaming around the earth, you know what I mean? So why not restless spirits in the water? You know, I believe that the water is a living thing, is a living being, you know what I mean? So why not have other living beings under the water?
It could be haunted, but there's not some entity pulling people under and killing people, which the stories would be, but the facts that are used to state and put evidence that Lake Lanier is haunted, many of those facts are not accurate.
And I've read a lot of books and articles about the lake and how even the Cherokee Indians, they lived here and how they were moved away, and just over the years, how things have happened on, for the lake, the land with the lake, I do think there's a possibility that there is something makes things a little odd because some things you just can't explain.
It was only 3 years ago when I found out about Oscarville that I had to go through those emotions, you know what I mean? I felt guilty because I was one of the people having fun out there, you know what I mean?
And now, as we begin to embark on this journey, let's dive into the waters to uncover the bloody past that even Lake Lanier can't wash away. The Cherokee Nation, one of the most popular native tribes, once thriving in Georgia's Blue Ridge Mountains and where Lake Lanier is today, faced displacement due to colonial expansion. In 1838, under President Andrew Jackson's orders, the Indian Removal Act was enforced, leading to the tragic Trail of Tears. Over 4,000 Cherokees perished during the forced journey to Oklahoma, and some of those that passed were buried in towns in the area called the Summermore Mounds. It was once a sacred area that belonged to the Native Americans, but this Native American burial ground is now submerged underneath the depths of Lake Lanier. The Summermore Mound site wasn't reported during the construction of the lake, and there was no attempt to preserve this sacred land. But the lake's violent history didn't stop there. 100 years later, from the 18th to the 19th century, a once thriving black community named Oscarville, which sits under Lake Lanier today, endured a tragic event that would shake up the lives of the black residents forever.
Oscarville was real, a real place. I saw the trees myself. If you haven't been up under the water to see the trees, you might not believe that there's trees under there. You may not believe that there's an actual town underneath there if you've never been under there. But I've been down there. I haven't been down there, but I've been in there. So I saw the trees, like the trees we see when we stand outside and look, the exact same trees under the water. As a people, think about Oscarville and the people of Oscarville. And we pray and we say, we sing songs together. We trust God together. So let's do that together. Pray about it. If that's what you need to do to pray about it, and pray about it. I mean, God ain't gave us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of love, peace, and a sound mind. Not fear. So with that being said, let's come together outside of fear. Let's learn our stories, and then let's stand on our stories so that we can teach our stories to our children. Then our children can teach our stories to their children, and so on and so on. So that way it's not just like I'm gonna keep saying his story, it's our story. Because Oscarville is our story, and we shouldn't run away from our story.
In the early 1900s, Oscarville was turning into a beacon of hope for African Americans throughout the southern parts of the country. Dozens of families had their own homes, many businesses were popping up, and things were generally good for all residents who consisted of carpenters, blacksmiths, and bricklayers, while farming was a top trade. But there was still an undercurrent of racial tension between this small but growing community of black and nearby white residents. And in September 1912, two separate incidents occurred in quick succession that blew up all progress that had been made. September 5th, 1912, in Forsyth County, Ellen Grice, a 22-year-old white resident, reported a terrifying incident. She alleged that a black man had broken into her home and assaulted her while her husband was away. Upon her husband's return, a search ensued to apprehend the alleged assailant. The search party detained Tony Howell, also 22, whom they accused of the attack. Subsequently, Forsyth County Sheriff Bill Reed arrested Howell along with Isaiah Perkle, Joe Rogers, Fate Chester, and Johnny Bates, claiming they were accomplices. They were all taken into custody and transported to the jail in Cumming. September 7, 1912, as white residents of Forsyth County learned of the arrest of the 5 black men, they formed a mob at the jailhouse in Cumming. A black preacher named Reverend Grant Smith hears about the incident and goes to the jail. He tells the crowd that Ellen Grice is a sorry white woman. This angers the white mob, which by then had grown to a few hundred people. They turn on Reverend Smith and beat him severely. Sheriff Reed and Deputy Loomis step in and protect Smith, taking him to safety inside the courthouse. At that time, many black people from Cumming were gathered at the Colored Methodist campground in their part of town for an annual barbecue. When they hear that the sheriff arrested Tony Howell and a mob attacked Reverend Smith, some men from the barbecue start heading toward downtown Cumming. This causes a rumor that black people were coming with explosives to blow up the town. Hearing this, more white residents with guns head to the town square. When the black men reach the jail, they find about 500 white residents waiting for them. The white men in the crowd chase the black men away while Mayor Charlie Harris tries to calm everyone down and get them to go home. But the white mob doesn't listen. Mayor Harris contacts Governor Joseph Brown of Georgia and asks him to send the National Guard to break up the crowd. When the National Guard shows up, the crowd finally breaks up and goes home. September 8th, 1912, amid the accusations by Ellen Grice and the beating of Reverend Grant Smith, a white resident of Oscarville, Mae Crow, 18, goes missing after visiting her aunt, and just one day later, on September 9th, 1912, a search party finds Mae Crow unconscious in the woods near her home, her throat cut, but still alive. They also discover a small pocket mirror nearby, and her family takes her home in her unconscious state. As word spreads, people gather nearby to see what's happening. At Pleasant Grove Church, not far away, a group of black teenagers, including 17-year-old Ernest Knox from Oscarville, watched the commotion. Knox had recently moved to the county to live with his extended family, the Daniels. They are among the few black residents in this area of Forsyth County. As noted in the 1910 census, which shows only 37 black residents out of 513 people in the New Bridge district. A respected community member approaches Knox and asks if he owns the mirror found in the woods. Knox admits it's his. It's unclear if he knows about Mae Crow's condition or that his mirror was found near her. Under pressure and being coerced, Knox confesses to attacking Mae Crow, and Sheriff Reed arrests him. News spreads quickly about Knox's arrest, sparking fears of mob violence. To protect him, authorities transfer Knox to the Fulton County Jail, known as the Fulton Tower, or the Tower. Rumors circulate that Knox may have had accomplices. September 10th, 1912. Within the morning, white men in the county imprison Rob Edwards, 24, and turn him over to Sheriff Reed. Sheriff Reed arrests Edwards for allegedly being involved in the attack on Mae Crow. Sheriff Reed takes Edwards to the jail in Cumming. When news of Edwards' arrest spreads, over 2,000 white men gather at the small jail, intending to kill him. Some men from the mob break into the jail, take Edwards out, and hang him from a telephone pole in downtown Cumming. They shoot his body multiple times after he is already dead. Sheriff Reed arrests 3 more black residents of Oscarville in connection with the attack on Mae Crow. They are Jane Daniel, her 17-year-old brother Oscar Daniel, and their 27-year-old neighbor Ed Collins. All 3 are taken to the Tower. After Edwards' lynching, white residents of Forsyth County begin to terrorize black families living there. Groups of white vigilantes use threats and arson to force black people to leave the county. Newspaper reports that white residents burned black churches and posted notices telling black families to leave. They also raided black homes, shooting rifles and damaging buildings. Faced with this violence, many black residents flee, often leaving everything behind. Black landowners either abandon their property or sell it cheaply at a loss. September 23rd of 1912. Mae Crow dies from her injuries sustained during the attack. Crow never had the chance to awake to identify her attackers. She is buried at Pleasant Grove Church, not far from her home on Durand Road in Oscarville. After Crow dies, Jane Daniel, Oscar Daniel, Ernest Knox, and Ed Collins are accused of murder, as well as the original charge of sexual assault. October 2nd of 1912, everyone detained for the crime on Mae Crow leaves the Fulton Tower in Atlanta to go to Cumming for their trial on October 3rd. There was no train from Atlanta to Cumming, so the prisoners rode the train to Buford, Georgia, and walked to Cumming. The Georgia National Guard takes them under escort to prevent mob violence. They stay overnight at a camp set up by the military. Judge Newton Morris presides over the trial. Judge Morris appoints lawyers to represent Jane and Oscar Daniel, Knox, and Collins. The lawyers protested against defending the accused and objected to even defending them. Between October 3rd and 4th of 1912, at the trial, prosecutors presented the narrative that Knox, Oscar Daniel, and Edwards attacked and assaulted Mae Crow while Jane Daniel held a lantern borrowed from Ed Collins. Collins and Jane Daniel confirmed this story with their testimony. Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel face separate trials. Oscar Daniel insists he is innocent during his trial. However, all white juries find Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel guilty of sexually assaulting and murdering Mae Crow. Judge Moore sentences them both to be hung. The Georgia National Guard takes Ernest Knox, Oscar Daniel, and Howell back to the Fulton Tower. Judge Morse schedules Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel's execution on October 25th, 1912. He decides the hangings will be private, witnessed only by family members and law officers involved. October 24th, 1912. Before the hanging, Dr. Strickland offers his land as the place for the hanging, but Sheriff Reed disobeys Judge Morse and builds gallows on Dr. Strickland's big field. While Sheriff Reed is busy putting up a fence for privacy, a mob sneaks in at night, tears down the fence, and burns it in a big fire. Dr. Strickland and Sheriff Reed don't stop the mob from doing this. October 25th, 1912, Sheriff Field to watch Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel being executed. And by the end of 1912, white Forsyth County residents had forced most of the black people who lived in the county to leave. They migrate to nearby counties within the state of Georgia to seek safety. But truthfully, there's more to the story of Oscarville than what was just stated. A close family friend of May Crow's was graciously enough to give us an exclusive interview to unveil the truth of what happened to May Crow in Oscarville. This is what actually transpired.
Well, being a family friend, I had someone who was affiliated and related to May Crow actually sit down with me and show me and tell me some of the history
behind what happened to her. So what happened to her is basically what you heard, but it shouldn't have went the way that it went, and it wasn't what it was.
Just to confirm with the family friend, we asked specifically if Rob Edwards, Ernest Knox, and Oscar Daniel were all framed for the assault and murder of May Crow. Also, if the family friend actually knew what happened to May Crow in September of 1912. This is what she had to say.
Definitely. It was way different than that. So back in the day, they used rivers and creeks as like a water source before Lake Lanier was Lake Lanier. And there was a specific water source that they used to go to, which was like kind of down an embankment, a little ways away. The routine at night, during like when it hit like dusk back then, her family would require that she like be home because there was like coyotes, there was like all kinds of animals that would come out at night. They'd want to make sure everybody was accounted for. And with her being like a 13th sibling out of 13 kids, they had a lot that they had to like focus on, a lot of children. She went down to the river to get some water. This is probably a couple hours before she's supposed to be home. There was only like a few like African American people in that time frame in that area. But I mean, there was a few. The people that were down there legitimately, like right after what happened to her, was the people that got accused of doing this to her, and they didn't do it whatsoever. It was actually a special needs person that did it, but she was beat in the head with a rock and she was raped. But back then in those times, they accused African American people for stuff like that when it wasn't them, you know? And it's really sad. It really is a sad thing. Like, so they accused them of that, and I know for a fact it wasn't that, because like I told you from a family source, I found out otherwise, and this is the closest source that is the closest to her that's living. So, but the thing is, whenever she went to the hospital, they just automatically assumed and accused the African American boys of doing this because she was unconscious and they couldn't like wake her up to ask her like, hey, did they do this to you? And she was in a state where she was unconscious and there was no response, so they just automatically assumed. That's why it's been hid so long. It's something that should have never happened, for one, and for two, it's something that both families have to live with, you know? Like, honestly, just being truthful.
Understanding that Oscar Daniel, Rob Edwards, and Ernest Knox were wrongfully accused and murdered, and that the town of Oscarville was senselessly destroyed, we wanted to dive deeper into May Crow's true character. Next, we asked what might have happened if May Crow had not been unconscious.
with her, with the person that I heard that she was, do I think like if she was conscious, would she say like, "Oh, they did that"? No, I don't think she would. She literally was the oldest. She took care of like all her siblings. Like she was kind, she was genuine. Like I just don't see her being like pointing the finger. Does that make sense?
Leading us to the question about how Mae Crow was ultimately killed between September 8th and 9th of 1912. The story, as we all know it, was that Mae Crow was found unconscious in the woods and that her throat was cut, but she was still alive. When asking the family friend about this is what she had to say.
Severely beaten in the head with a rock. I don't know why they say like severely, probably like bludgeoned, like, you know, enough to where she was unconscious and died from her injuries. You know what I mean? Like, okay, let me tell you this. Like, if somebody's neck was slashed, why would they even come and she would be like, hey, like trying to get you to identify somebody, you know? Because obviously you're done for, you know? But like today I was looking on like Google, like just kind of like looking at like stuff people's posted about her and stuff, like just down Google. And I was like, dang, like back then there wasn't nothing about this, you know? I just remember looking at it back then. And then now you just got like so many different stories. And I'm like, whoa, you know, I didn't even realize it was like something major like that.
Next, we wanted to know from the Crow's family friend, why does she think such a tragic event happened to a once thriving Black community, and that the young men were ultimately lynched?
Like I said, back then everything was kind of diverse. So like the few African American people that were generally in that area, because a lot of them have moved, were just kind of like, I feel like they were just kind of like targets. Does that make sense? So like, say she went down to the river to get some water. These African American boys were around, so therefore I feel like they were framed and they were perfect. They were in the general area of where the events took place, so they were the main, like, it's you know, like, I feel like it was all just a targeted attack, really. I don't think that it was specifically because of the people that they were at all.
This led us to the most shocking news, Mae Crow's dad.
I think it was her dad. That's who pinpointed them and said, hey, it was y'all that did it.
And who was Mae Crow's dad? He was a sheriff within Hall County, a highly powerful and respected position in law enforcement to this very day.
It was her dad. I genuinely think that like her, if it was her being like, because she was just a kind person, I just don't see her being like, yeah, they did that. I think she would really, in all actuality, point out who really did that to her. You know what I mean? But I feel like there were so many strings pulled for that to happen because of the image that they had. It was easy. You know what I mean? Like it was easy for them to be like, it was them. You know what I mean? Like if you think back then, like with all the racial stuff going on, it put it on them. You know what I mean? Like that's how I feel. Like how I feel about how the history is portrayed about Lake Lanier is it's all tragic. Very, very tragic. Like it's nothing good that comes from the history portrayed. Something that was very tragic, horrible, or horrific, and it just keeps continuing to be horrible and horrific by these people dying and going missing. The way that I feel about the current state of the lake is honestly, I think that it's something that just needs to be condemned. Honestly, like I think it just needs to be like out of all places. Why don't you just make a lake somewhere else? You know, like I think it just needs to be like filled in, honestly, made into a big ass park or something. Hey, even rivers, you don't hear about the stuff that happens in rivers even that frequently, you know, like it's something every single year. And it's been like that since I was a kid, you know?
Finally, we asked if the family friend of the Crows had any final words about Mae Crow in the historical context behind her death.
If she was a person just like you and I, what happened to her happened to not just her, it happened to 3 other people as well.
Also, if she knew who had actually been behind the crime of the murder and assault.
I really wish I knew his name. I really wish I knew his back history. Maybe I can figure that out one day. He was just a mentally ill. Obviously, he wasn't that slow, though, to do the things that he did and to the degree that he did it. You know what I mean? So I don't know if it was just like a medically like proven thing, or if it was just something people said, or I just know that I really wish I knew who he was today, honestly, because he should be held accountable for that, you know? Think about it. Because of his actions, 4 people lost their lives. If you think about like that being her dad too, that makes sense as to why it was so easy to get.
Now that the truth of what happened to the city of Oscarville has been brought to light, It's time to learn how some of the same principles that led to the destruction of Oscarville are still prevalent in Forsyth County today for a small business owner.
My name is Steve Guello. I'm director of the North Georgia Boating Club.
And what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Lake Lanier?
I had never seen an inland lake that had the white sandy beaches, the blue water, crystal clear. You could see your feet when you're swimming. That was the type of thing that I was used to seeing in maybe Cancun, the Bahamas, somewhere in the ocean that's known for beautiful crystal clear water. I've made it my life. It's my living. I do boating training on the lake, teach boating safety, as well as help people find great vacation homes to enjoy the lake. Well, my first experience on the lake was moving to some condominiums on the lake. This was probably back in 1994. And just new to the area, met some people, lived near the lake, so therefore went out with friends on the lake. And it was kind of odd to me that we would go around the lake, even on a holiday weekend in a friend's boat, and you see this lake house here, another lake house over there, and just rows of lake houses, and they were empty. I didn't understand why they were empty, and I guess the thing that I figured out over time was it's pretty much government restriction. They were only wanting people to reside in the home that was a family or lived there, basically. So when somebody has a second home, it's vacant 40, 45 weeks out of the year, basically, because they live and go to school and work somewhere else, basically. So it's a bunch of second homes, and it seemed to me like a poor use of an amazing, something I thought was, pretty amazing, which was, being able to have a house on the water with a boat dock and boats, and I just like the water, always have.
The Timber Estate was the 13th or 14th home that Steve built. It's a part of the North Georgia Boating Club and serves as an executive retreat with a unique lakefront home attached to boating dock. Its property features 10 bedrooms accommodating up to 38 guests and includes 12 and a half bathrooms. But this large estate didn't come to fruition without some large problems from Forsyth County, both when it was built and even prior to being built on Steve's journey. Steve's continued willingness and belief to do business with people of color, and everyone for that matter, didn't sit well with everyone over at Forsyth County. But to understand how it all happened, we have to go back over 3 decades ago when the first problem arose regarding the Timber Estate.
I guess it was December 2016. And the building inspector came out and looked at this property with an unscheduled inspection, just to ask a simple question. What is it? What's it going to be? What are you going to do with it? It's very different than anything we've seen here before. It seemed like the local government didn't necessarily want vacation homes on the lake. And prior to building this home, we were involved in our boating experiences, from smaller boats to big boats and captaining boats and that type of thing, and teaching and training boating. But we also had a facility where if somebody wanted to have a party, let's put them on a houseboat. That way they can be in the middle of the lake, because prior to building this house, we were still renting out houses, other houses, short-term as vacation homes as well. And the only feedback we ever got or pushback we ever got from it was if a party got out of hand and people were hooping and hollering till 2 in the morning and that type of thing. So therefore, we devised a way to avoid the house being a party house. And so in essence, if you want to have a party, put you in a big boat on the lake. If you want to enjoy the lake leisurely with a smaller group, then maybe renting a vacation home for 3 days or a week at a time is the best fit for you. So we kind of guided people who wanted to experience Lake Lanier, but how? What's your intent? You and your friends, you want to party hard, you bring in mom and dad and the grandparents to have a family weekend. We want to put you in the right environment. The houseboat parties were really cool because there weren't noise restrictions because there's not for anybody on the lake. So somebody that wanted to have a blowout party could have a DJ and they could play their music and they could really enjoy themselves. And there was a big market for short-term rentals in a down economy. So the business was booming and it helped a whole bunch of people. But year one with the houseboat portion of it was great. We did 20, 25 different groups and it went well. The second year had a few more groups. What really kind of changed the environment for us was the third year, and there was a pop song, not pop, rap, pop, whatever it is, I don't know, group called Lonely Island that featured some white boys and a black rapper, and they had T-Pain, yeah. And this song became very popular, and it was all about partying on a boat and wanting to be on a boat. And all of Atlanta decided that these houseboat rentals were great. So we went from, and these numbers are rough from memory, but 15, 20 rentals one year to maybe 30 the next year. And then when that song came out, it went to 300 plus. It was a rap song.
Right.
So Black people followed that artist, and that artist put a lot of money in our pockets because everybody wanted to be on a boat.
After the popularity of the Lonely Island and T-Pain's record, I'm on a Boat, the demographic of Steve's consumer base changed to more Black people and people of color. This shift of demographic and Steve's willingness to continue to do business with anybody, regardless of their skin color, made a few powerful people at the lake look in his direction.
Well, I remember one encounter where an Army Corps of Engineers ranger approached our boat that was beached at Tidwell Park. Some neighbor lady walks alongside the ranger, brings him over to us and points at us and says, "See, that's not allowed. That's commercial activity on the lake." "Well, ma'am, how do you know it's commercial?" "Everybody's Black. The captain's white. They can't be friends." And it was a boat club excursion. It was a not-for-profit entity, the North Georgia Boating Club, and an excursion. It was organized in a non-commercial fashion. Then we went through meetings with the Army Corps of Engineers and their rangers and their attorneys in order to prove our documentation that we're a not-for-profit boating club and path to continue doing the short-term rentals. I mean, the short-term party rentals or the party boat rentals. It ended in citations, actually criminal citations. Somebody within the Army Corps of Engineers decided, okay, well, we're going to rewrite our policy, our Lake Lanier Project policy manual to make this illegal. So then we got the citation the next year again, and we lost in court that time.
It got so bad, Steve was put on probation for doing nonprofit boat tours. He was fined $30,000 and couldn't step on a boat over 25 feet long. As Steve was on probation, he began the construction of the timber estate with a customer. However, just like his nonprofit boat tours, the timber estate faced similar trials and tribulations that were for the same reasons. But to add another layer of chaos, Steve's customer of the timber estate became his partner and things did not go as planned.
I'm a working man. I needed to make money. I built the house for a customer. I didn't build it for any other specific purpose. And as the relationship with that customer evolved in the planning stages, and because of the unique process in building a home like this that didn't give that investor the same level of safety or comfort, he decided that he didn't want me to be his contractor anymore. He wanted me to be his partner. And that way he would be able to invest his money, and then whatever value the house had above and beyond what it cost to build it, we're going to split that, was the game plan. This one's a hard one because it's speculation, but my partner, who was previously my client, somehow over time, once we were told that, hey, short-term rentals aren't something we want you to do in Forsyth County or something like that, we looked at the code book, looked at the law, and said, it's a vacation zone. That's exactly what it's for, basically. My partner and I both decided we were going to fight and we're going to challenge that. And then some months later, my partner had sold the house out from under me, with my half of the house, the proceeds being very small relative to the work that had been done in order to do that. What the hell's going on? I've heard people say it over and over again, is that, no, I can't do this, I can't do that. The wrong way is to rent the house to black people. That's just what it all added up to. They, the community, the mentality, and the circumstances led to the very, and I don't need to tell you this, but led to one of the most recent attacks, I guess, on a community, gladiator style, with night riders and torches and burning buildings and hanging men. So in essence, this county was cleansed of all black people in 1912, is what history says. And I don't think there's anybody that disputes that. I mean, the will, the political will and desire as you go through the years from 1912 to the early 1960s, it was pretty simple. You post a sign, you let people know that this is a white community, and the world accepted that. Now, the residents of Forsyth County that have always had things a certain way had fears because they used to live. They had family that lived in Stone Mountain and other places that had become predominantly black, and their fears of property values going down and this and that type of thing that caused them to act and react that way. There was a desire, certainly in the 50s, certainly in the 60s, all the way into the 80s, that was overt, that you could see, that said, hey, we're a white community, we want to stay a white community. So 1912 was get out, and then since then it's stay out.
Despite Steve's partner selling his half of the house to a newly formed alliance with some individuals from Forsyth County in the Army Corps of Engineers, aimed at stopping short-term rentals and preventing him from renting to black people and people of color, Steve continued to fight. He persevered in his efforts to rent the house to black people and people of color, and to challenge the Army Corps of Engineers in Forsyth County. Eventually, Steve regained ownership of his half of the home and continued his mission of renting out the timber estate to everyone. When we asked Steve what motivated him to keep renting the timber estate to people from all walks of life, he shared his thoughts, which led us into a discussion about his initial unawareness of Oscarville.
To be honest, being focused on what I do, loving the lake, loving the beauty, and just in general liking people, I was oblivious to Oscarville. I had no idea. I knew they made the lake in the 1950s, and there's always been stories on any man-made lake that there were inhabitants of that land prior to. So when somebody says, oh, there's a town under there, I'm like, that makes sense. Okay. They make a dam, they fill the river backflows, and communities and towns had to be abandoned and evacuated, and people had to move, but they were paid, they were compensated for their land. Some say fairly, some say not fairly, but no, the whole idea of Forsyth County and not in the racial component of wanting to keep blacks out of Forsyth County was just not something that I understood, and it wasn't overt because I got here in the 90s. I got here in 94, 95. People knew they couldn't talk that way. They knew they couldn't say that. They knew they couldn't do these things except in certain company, I guess. I guess the very, very first weirdness I got would go back 29 years with my oldest son, who's half black. He didn't like going to the lake. He didn't like it here. Oh, come on, Corey, what's wrong? People look at me funny. I didn't pick up on it. I thought he was just being a kid and insecure or whatever. I have no idea, But anyways, in hindsight, the whole Oscarville component and that type of thing, it's new to me. It's within the past 2 or 3 years. Something of that magnitude that happened to people and was caused by people that are here today, their grandparents. So there's a direct connection with that sentiment, basically.
This led us to hear Steve's shocking theory that certain parts of Forsyth County are using reverse psychology on colored communities, and that some people within the county want black people and people of color to all fear going to the lake.
It's schoolyard logic. Come on. I mean, if for generations your community has been strictly white and says that racial discrimination, isn't right, yet the stories of Oscarville that created the haunting stories that happened several generations ago, why wouldn't you allow those stories to continue? Why wouldn't you perpetuate those stories? And those stories are simple. These people aren't like that now or whatever. They're not. Most everybody in Forsyth County that I've met, were nice to me, nice to my kid. It seemed like there wasn't really an issue. And in hindsight, I look back on it, maybe it's only 10 or 15 or a dozen people had the power, had the levers of power, and were trying to push things in a direction that they wanted or maintain the status quo. For generations, your community has been strictly white, and those stories. And those stories are simple. These people that we don't want to be here don't want to come here because it's haunted. So I've found a very interesting set of facts that I don't have numbers on, but if Lake Altoona, say Lake Lanier's had 700 deaths since its inception, so a third of that would mean that Lake Altoona, had 220 deaths or something to that effect, 240, 50 deaths. But though the people that died on Lake Altoona from drowning or boat accidents or whatever, they don't make the news. So political animals also learn to control the media, whether it be on the far right, or whether it be on the far left. They want to control the media to get the narrative out there that will produce the result that they want. So let's promote this. When somebody dies on Lake Lanier, they're on the news. They're in the front page in the local paper. They're in the Atlanta, Channel 2, Channel 5. Everybody covers it because somebody within the structure of the political establishment is controlling the press to do that. And it's just a matter of maybe a reporter just gets fed their stories. Hey, we want you to cover this. Well, who's pointing them to cover this versus that or whatever? But if it's not a conspiracy, it's absolutely convenient. Every death now making national news in Lake Lanier and the neighboring lake. If you want to be private about your drowning, that's where you need to go.
With Steve discovering Oscarville 2 or 3 years ago, we asked him if it felt like a full circle moment, considering everything he's faced.
Why? What? Go home after work, hang out with my wife, talk about the day, what's going on, what's happening. We're getting sued by this guy for some stupid reason. I've never met the guy before. I don't know. So it wasn't the government coming after us. There were lawsuits from strangers, people we'd never met before. I sold a house to somebody that sold a house to somebody else that decided that they wanted to sue me over something and that type of thing. And I just didn't fit in. People didn't like me for some reason. I didn't really understand it, to be honest with you. Obviously, as you get into those things, the whole idea that there's this culture that, in essence, has that goal of racial division or racial expulsion and to keep people, that was far-fetched for today's age. It was very much something that if I said it to somebody, it's a conspiracy theory, that's craziness. No, people aren't like that now or whatever. They're not. Most everybody in Forsyth County that I've met, were nice to me, nice to my kid. It seemed like there wasn't really an issue. And in hindsight, I look back on it, maybe it's only 10 or 15 or a dozen people had the power, had the levers of power, and were trying to push things in a direction that they wanted or maintain the status quo on the way they were raised.
We also inquired if he knew whether those targeting him were part of a coordinated effort to promote racial division and undermine his business by preventing him from renting to Black people and people of color.
It's called conspiracy. It's called racketeering, and absolutely, it's not against the law if it's not criminal. So if you conspire to sell a brownie, it's not illegal. But if you conspire to commit fraud, it is illegal. And the people here in Forsyth County that have the levers of power seem to be willing to conspire in order to take away things, which is stealing property rights. They're willing to conspire to take away fairness and opportunity. If you have a beef, that's what the court systems are for. But the network is big. People that are part of the network aren't necessarily bad. They're part of the network because they want to survive. You have to go along with them. You have to agree with them, or you're going to suffer some type of setback.
The network consists of highly influential elites in government positions who can shape the county according to their agenda. They achieve this by threatening those with less power, jeopardizing their jobs, livelihoods, and more if they stand in their way.
And that was the thing. So wouldn't that apply to an attorney too? So if I were to hire an attorney to defend myself against this, yet they have the network, that attorney's never going to get a government job again if he's going against the government of Forsyth County, at least not within, when I say a government job, not a, do work as an attorney, he could be blackballed, she could be blackballed, and it would just, it's self-preservation. So the legal system is basically, justice has nothing to do with it today. From my perspective, from what I see, it's a matter of leverage and bullying. If these people hold the lever of power and that's what they want, they're going to use unfair methods to get it. What fixes it is consequences. Super simple. If you want people to stop stealing TVs out of Walmart, somebody's got to go to jail. And then people think, maybe I don't want to steal a TV. But if there's zero consequences, nobody in the history has ever gone to jail for committing this crime, and the crime is stealing property rights. The crime is, bullying people just so you can get your way. And it could be done for other reasons. Take the racial component out of it. Maybe Forsyth County likes what they see here. Seems like they tried to buy it once. At least their operatives or people within their structure. There's word about the park across the water over here. They're going to build lake houses for vacation rentals, but they're going to do it in the right way. It's going to be in a confined area that doesn't bleed into the neighborhoods or whatever, but steal somebody's dream. We can make money. We can shut him down. We can get these people on our side if we let them know that we're just going to keep things in this one little district so their world doesn't change any more than it has to, so we can make money. This is not, the experiences I've had recently are not exclusively racial. There's that element that is exclusively focused on keeping Forsyth County the way it was when they grew up. And then that collides with big investment money that wants to come in, and they need to control that. Why can't a man just buy a piece of land, cut down the frickin' trees, and build a house? And if it happens to sit on the shores of one of the most beautiful inland bodies of water in the country, why can't he share that experience with others and profit by it?
To conclude our interview, we recognized that Steve has faced significant challenges over the years, battling Forsyth County, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and unseen adversaries. Despite